totalitarianism. Well, like going back to Hungary for a moment, just before I got there, a couple of weeks before I arrived in Budapest, Bill Clinton actually went after the president of Hungary and the president of Poland because they were speaking out against open borders. And Bill Clinton was chastising them and essentially trying to invoke the moral authority of the U.S. because of what the U.S. did for those countries in World War II. You know, we basically saved Europe, which is true. We did save.
I know.
Right? But
that was so
right.
70 years ago, folks. Come on.
Well, there's a better point in that because what Clinton was doing was essentially trying to shame them and say, and his comment was something to the effect that, well, I guess democracy is just too tough for you. You don't value it, despite our shedding of all of our blood for you. Well, when I saw that he did that, I read the article and I was there in Hungary.
I gotta find that.
I wrote an open letter to Viktor Orban, and I said, I want to defend you against what Bill Clinton has said and point something out that Bill Clinton has absolutely no authority to speak on behalf of the generation of World War II because he does not hold the values of that generation. As a matter of fact, you hold the values of that generation. And if there was an election back then in which you were against Bill Clinton in the United States, you would win hands down because you actually represent the values of the people who fought and bled on European soil. And that he actually got that letter, I believe.
Good.
Yeah, it was.
That is unbelievable. Let's say, folks, we just got a history lesson. Let's segue a little bit. Obviously, you ran in 14, and we did start to talk about that. But now you're doing it again. Is it the same reason why you ran in 14? Is there something different going on?
Well, there is. The first time that I did this, frankly, I think some people know this anyway. That, when you stand up to the left, they come after you, and if you don't shrink. And I've been doing it for 30 years now. Mm-hmm. What they did to me back in 2012 is I got hit with a lawsuit for crimes against humanity in U.S.
Is that the Uganda thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind talking about it?
Yeah, I want to talk about it.
All right, go ahead, please.
It was basically for preaching against homosexuality in Uganda. And this is a Marxist law firm out of Manhattan, really drove this thing to try to shut me up and put me out of business, bankrupt me. Liberty Counsel came in, took up the legal defense, and I went through 5 years of legal hell. Now, I'm an attorney, but this was beyond my, and you never represent yourself anyway in these kind of things. But it was awful, and they were using the Saul Alinsky tactic on me. Pick a target to be the symbol of your opposition, freeze the target in place, then destroy the target as an example to everybody else. This is what's going to happen to you too. And so here I am. My wife and I moved into the inner city of Springfield. We bought an abandoned crack house with all the plumbing torn out, and we're remodeling it as an example of redemptive living. We bought a building, historic building, and turned it into a church, a mission church that dealing with the most disadvantaged people, mentally ill, etc. My life is exemplifies the things that the left says you're supposed to do. It's all lip service for them.
Sure, right.
And yet, not one single word about any of those good works ever came out in any of the newspapers because they wanted to keep me frozen in place as an anti-gay criminal against humanity who wants to kill it's a lie, wants to kill homosexuals around the world. And when you're in that box, there's no way out if there's no conservative media. So, what could I do? I ran for governor. When I ran for governor in 2014, it was as much as anything else. Of course, I wanted to articulate biblical values, and it was a great platform. But I also wanted to break out of that box, and it worked.
Wow! Because it was I see exactly the tactic. That is amazing.
And you know what? I would get on radio shows with moderates and even liberals.
Oh, I wish I had you on the show. Oh, that would have been such a story.
And they talked to me for a little while. They go, "You are so different. than what I thought you would be, right? And you know, when I heard those things, I knew I'm inside. I'm rejoicing because I'm going, yeah, because it was over. And you know that it destroyed the box, and that I defeated the Lord, taught me how to defeat the Alinsky strategy. So, but anyway, what happened in that though is I ran on purposely telling people I did not want to win. I only wanted to have a platform. I intentionally raised the minimal amount of money necessary, only about $25,000
Right.
for a statewide gubernatorial race, and I ran part-time because I did it a few hours a week because I was running my ministry and all that.
Sure.
And you know what? Despite that, I came in fourth out of 5 candidates.
Right.
Jeff McCormick spent $1 million to get
And he was
17,000
behind you.
votes. I spent $25,000 and I got 20,000 votes. And Falchuk with a huge network, spent $1.5 million
Yeah.
and got 70,000 votes. Right? So between the three of us, the independents, none of us were ever going to win anyway. It's a 2-party state. But it blew people's minds, and it scared the left because they didn't even think I would get the
Scared Charlie
signatures.
Baker. I got news for you.
Yeah.
Sure it did.
But
In fact, the only way that he was able to win is for Mass and GOP to screw over Fisher at the convention.
oh, that was awful what they did to him.
But that was the only way, and it was the only way because now when the primaries came and you knew, all right,
I
I'm
was
not going to win.
independent, so I
But
wasn't worried
you
about
weren't.
that.
So, but were you looking to maybe throw some of your supporters towards Mark Fisher?
Well, I met with Mark and I told him that, look, I said, if you win, then I'll drop out and I'll wait for a strategic time and I'll endorse you.
Sure,
Right.
right.
And
That's what I mean. That
Yeah.
scared the shit. Excuse my that's my
Yeah.
radio show. Scared the shit out of Charlie Baker.
yeah, and
That's why he had to do what he had to do at the convention.
Yeah, it's because he's just a political opportunist. But in the end, what people had an opportunity to see is that Scott Lively is not motivated by reputation, right? Obviously, if I'm out there doing this, being under the Damocles sword of a crimes against humanity lawsuit and getting bashed by the media every day. Obviously, I don't care about. It's not about reputation. It's not about money. It's not about power.
Right.
It's about principles. About standing for the right things.
Now, who was it that filed that lawsuit? How?
That was the Center for Constitutional Rights. It's a Marxist law firm. You know where their office is?
Go ahead.
666 Broadway, New
Jesus
York,
Christ.
Manhattan.
And I do mean that.
Yeah.
Please, Jesus. Oh.
Yeah, isn't that something? And yeah, these are the people that represented Chelsea Manning.
Right. Okay.
Right?
There you go.
It's every leftist cause. These are the guys that actually pioneered the use of the Alien Tort Statute to try to bring foreign corporations under U.S. jurisdiction so they could attack them to affect social policy in foreign countries.
Sure. There you go.
And after 30 years of doing this, the Supreme Court finally got fed up and said, "No, you can't do this anymore." And all the cases that were active under the Alien Tort Statute, which is what they sued me under, all of them were dismissed except mine. The judge in my case, the Springfield, Michael Ponzer, who very strongly pro-gay, he's a leftist ideologue.
Right.
He did not dismiss my case. As a matter of fact,
Out of principle, he had an axe to grind.
and
Oh, please, come on, folks. There's no other way to think about it, really.
He denied my motion to dismiss after the Alien Tort Statute was gutted, 90% gone, and every other case was dismissed, and made me go through 4 years of intense, $1.5 million worth of litigation expenses by Liberty Counsel, 4 years of digging into all my books and depositions. All this is tough to go through.
Right.
And in the end, he granted our motion for summary judgment on the exact same ground that we argued 4 years before.
What the hell is there to find in your... I mean, you're a minister, for crying out loud.
It's anything. It's to
I
find
mean, you're not
anything
involved.
to
You're not like
address.
Donald Trump involved
I know.
in half a dozen businesses
I know.
international.
But you know what they say? It's the process is the punishment.
Right.
And what's the point of all this? Why do they go after people like me or Dinesh D'Souza?
Sure.
Right?
There you go.
Or others? Why do they do this? It's to put fear into everybody
It's
else.
that Saul Alinsky thing. Put them in the box,
Right.
freeze them,
Right, and make your enemies suffer, so that you raise the cost of speaking the truth so high that almost nobody will do it.
Right.
Right? You know, people who will stand up and say homosexuality is absolutely wrong, you know, gay marriage is wrong, homosexual adoption is wrong because homosexuality is wrong. You know how few people in this country still are willing to actually say that out loud publicly.
Sure.
Why? Because even though we have the First Amendment, supposedly, because if you dare to do that, they will destroy you. That's totalitarianism.
Yes.
That's brown shirt fascism, and it's alive and well in the United States, and it's killing conservatives because our people will. We don't have people willing to make the sacrifice.
Right. Like I said, it's just a blocking defensive maneuver that we're engaged in.
Except, so what I realized in the middle of that lawsuit was the most valuable part of my ministry at this point, of all the other things that I'd ever done, was simply showing an example of courage under persecution. Right? I didn't have to do anything.
It's one of the main tenets of
not
Christianity
capitulate.
anyway, the constant persecution.
Yeah.
And the righteousness and the truth.
And it's not about me. I'm not some great guy. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. I used to be an alcoholic and a drug addict, a criminal, and the Lord saved me, changed me, and it's all glory goes to Him. But you know, false modesty is a sin too, and that when He does something, when He gives you a gift, when you're actually doing something that's right, like Paul in his letter said, look at the example that I'm setting for you and follow it. And that's what I'm saying right now. I'm saying this to people all across the United States. If you have the strength of your convictions and boldness, and you're willing to step out in sacrifice and enter the public arena, now is the time to do it. Right? The great war, the great election war of 2018.
The nationalist movement is growing, sure.
Well, what I'm saying is that if we lose ground in 2018, see, what Donald Trump did for us by saving us from Hillary Clinton, can you imagine where we would be at right now if Hillary Clinton had become president?
I cannot.
We might be steering a jail cell. You know, I mean, it literally could have been that bad.
My show would probably be canceled. Yeah, the whole internet thing, sure.
And Donald Trump, he gave us a reprieve from that. So, but
look at what's happening to him too. The constant phalanx onslaught.
Yeah, there's never been a president under assault like he has from both sides, and the deep state is not gone. He's making progress against it, but it's so deeply entrenched. But keeping that all in mind, recognize there's a limited window of opportunity for people who have authentic conservative values to take the country back. Because if Donald Trump fails, right, and the lesson from that to the whole world is that Donald Trump style populism and conservatism cannot succeed against the elites, then where is another hero going to come from? If Donald Trump can't do it,
certainly.
A billionaire with practically unlimited personal resources and the type of character that does bare knuckle fighting without apology, right?
Sure.
If he can't do it, nobody can do it, right? That's the way it is. So the 2018 midterm election, this is it, man. This is it.
After that,
if the Democrats take either house, right?
He's lame for the rest of his first term, and the distinct possibility he doesn't get a second term.
Right, and then
unless he can pull a Reagan in '84, where
and I think he will.
It's the economy, stupid. That famous saying.
Right, I think he's the Reagan of this present generation, and I'm rooting for him with everything I've got, but at the same time I'm saying this is the time, gentlemen and ladies, this is the time
to do it.
For people of real principle to step up, because the window is closing. If we collapse in 2018, I don't think 2020 is. I think 2020 is a foregone conclusion.
You segue into a great point here. One of the things I've covered many times on my show is how Mass GOP shoots itself in the foot here in Massachusetts. The Dean Tran victory. When I saw that he had won, I was like, oh, well, that came out of nowhere. That was, I fully as I do these interviews, I go through the roster of grassroots candidates and people, and it's like, oh, it's great. I try to get them on the show. Love to have them talk. I go to their events, this kind of thing. But always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, Mass GOP will screw this up. They'll
Yeah.
screw it up. And so the Dean Tran thing was a pleasant surprise. Why do we do that here in Massachusetts? Here it is 2018. We all know it's Pinnacle. Elizabeth Warren, we got a lot of great people running. But we're already seeing it. When, you weren't there at the last CLT meeting, but a representative of John Kingston's campaign was there speaking. Instantaneously, the questions came, well, I'm not surprised. He did this in whatever year, and I don't think he's got this. And I interrupted, like I said the
Yeah.
last time when you were there. I said, listen, this is the problem. We keep shooting ourselves in the foot. He doesn't represent my values, so I'm staying home on election day. She doesn't, it doesn't matter. This is why we have primaries.
Yeah.
In the end, whose ever name is in the R, show up in November and vote for that person. Well, then they'll just become like another Democrat or whatever. It's like it's your job as a
To
constituent
hold their feet to the
to
fire.
hold their feet to the fire. Politics is a hands-on bloody sport, folks.
Well, there are different strategies for approaching these things, and I think that it can be a mistake to just simply go with the R. I think sometimes you have to let the liberal Republicans get a bloody nose so that they stop going. You know how it is. How we're expected to always cave to the moderate side.
Right, we talked about that, right.
They
Always a
never,
blocking maneuver.
ever
Cave to us.
cave to the conservatives.
Sure.
Right? They would rather lose the election than to allow a conservative Republican to take the seat.
And that's my point. That's been a huge premise of all of my interviews for the past 10 years with all of the candidates. It's
Right.
not just here in Mass. I've
Yeah.
seen it when I have other people from across the country on. I ask them, what's the RNC in your state doing? Nothing. They're not supporting me.
But by the same token, we should not put somebody in office just because they have an R after their name, because the worst enemy of conservatives are liberal Republicans.
Right.
Because you can't get rid of them.
And I understand, right? But I understand where you're coming from. The only reason why I'm pushing that premise is because we're so effed up here in the state of Massachusetts anyway that when that day comes in November, it's like, you know what? I'm going to vote for a Kingston or a Lindstrom.
Right. It depends on
Because
how
I'm certainly
far
not
they
going
are,
to vote
right.
for these people that are in there now, especially
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Democrats.
that's true.
I'm not voting for Elizabeth
That's true.
Warren.
And sometimes you do a particular voting strategy to make a particular point. But just remember, we never would have gotten Ronald Reagan if it hadn't been for Jimmy Carter,
Certainly.
right?
We would have got Donald Trump if
That's
it wasn't
right.
for Obama.
So if in the prior election we had ended up with a liberal Republican instead of Jimmy Carter,
Jeb Bush or
we
Kasich,
would
right?
never have gotten Ronald Reagan. You have to let people feel the pain of the far left in order for them to realize what the problem is,
Hmm.
right? If you
Why do we keep doing it? Jimmy Carter, we remember. You and I have gray hair. We remember the Carter years, Obama years.
well, yeah,
Why
why did we get Donald Trump?
why
got
do we
Donald
keep
Trump
going
because
through
of
this?
Obama.
Yeah, but
Right.
why do we keep going back down
Because
this road?
people don't remember, right? People who fail to learn
Right.
from history are doomed to repeat it. And unfortunately, the length of memory for the average citizen is
Yeah.
not very long when it comes to political things.
Right.
Most people don't think about politics until the day before the election,
Sure.
or at least a
You'd
short
be
period.
surprised. Well, you probably just in your day-to-day interaction, people aren't. They don't.
Yeah, they don't know.
There's no concept.
Even politically oriented people, they don't know what date the primary is, or
Sure,
they don't
right.
know necessarily the sequence of how things happen. It's just that they like political stuff, so they pay attention to that when it comes on the news. But I've always been oriented toward the culture war. It's not about candidates, but about issues. So
Mhm.
I
Yes.
look at candidates based on where they stand on things.
Right.
And I would support, if there was a conservative Democrat out there and a liberal Republican, I'd go with the conservative Democrat. I mean, just simply because
Certainly.
it's the issues, not the.
Right. If they've got the
Yeah,
issues.
you got a pro-life Democrat out there. Are there any left? I don't know.
Yeah.
But You know, in the
The Z- what
1950s.
is I remember Zell Miller's speech in the '04 convention when George Bush ran for his second term, and that famous Zell Miller speech when he's like, "Where are the Democrats that landed us at Omaha Beach? Where are the
Exactly.
Democrats that brought in he did mention the New Deal that put the country back to work. Where are those Democrats? You know."
Well, look, the 1950s, and I wrote an article today, I put out a daily newsletter. Now, in fact, people who are listening who want to follow me, votelively.com. That's my blog, and you can get on that list. But I put an article out today. I was born in 1957. When I was born, Massachusetts was a powerhouse state,
Mhm.
right? We had a vibrant economy, the families were intact, the churches were filled, there were factories thriving, the family farms everywhere, and all that's gone. All that's gone. And even in those days, even the Democrats were mostly conservative. They had the values we talk about.
Certainly.
They held those values. And so that's what I want back.
Right.
I want that. I want my state back.
What was it entirely the infiltration of Marxism, the '60s revolution, that completely changed the Democrat Party, or was it something completely? Because you had mentioned about how even in the '50s the Democrats. And my mother was a Democrat, God rest her soul. But I mean, she was an early Kennedy Democrat. I mean, if she was alive today, this would not be the wagon she would hitch herself to.
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot. Matt.
But is it
Catholic.
solely Marxism that has infiltrated it?
Well, clear. Obviously there are other factors at play in every situation, but really it's a contest of ideologies. Really, what is Marxism? What is Marxism really? It's the alternative to the biblical worldview.
Sure.
It rests on a foundation of evolution,
Mm.
right? Which is the alternative to creation, and it provides a complete, comprehensive package of perspectives and ideas and views and conclusions that contradict the biblical worldview. This is all about
Yeah.
about destroying Judeo-Christian civilization. And so, and you look, all the issues that we face, everything that we deal with, it all comes down in one way or another to Marxism.
Right. What's great about Christianity is it is very individualistic because each person has to come to Christ their own way. And one of the things that you come to realize in Christianity is you are the captain of your own ship. And God has given you the tools, He's shown you the path, now it's up to you.
Yeah. You are a sovereign human being.
And that runs
created by
counter to the
God.
communists, that whole,
It
even
does.
even the leftist progressivism that we see today, it runs counter. It's like, no, the state,
Yeah.
oh no, comply to this, comply to that.
Yeah, that's right. It's
People don't get it. It's like, no, I'll say it on conversations I have online. I've said it folks, I say it a million times on the show. I have this staunch, it's none of the government's business. Well, none of the government's business on what? On everything. How I live my life, how I earn my money, how I spend my money, how I interact with my family. It's all
within
private.
reason.
Well, of course, within
what the
reason.
founding fathers
Right,
called
exactly.
ordered liberty.
But I'm
Ordered
talking about this all-knowing, all-seeing
Yeah,
eye
yeah,
of
yeah.
the government that we see today.
Well,
It's none of their
government-
business.
government-
And people don't get that. They say, Mater, it's like you don't get it. I am my own sovereign person. The only person I answer to is right
but
there.
even saying that though is sort of capitulating to the idea that government is somehow separate and distinct from us. It's not. Government is delegated authority. The only power
Instituted
government
by
is
man,
supposed to
right,
have,
exactly.
it's power that we delegate
Yes.
to other people that we allow to sit in these positions of authority to act on our behalf at our direction.
If we had that,
Right.
Scott, that would be
That's what
that would be a
government-
wonderful world to live in.
That's right. That's what the founders.
Right.
That's what the found. And you know what the closest place you see that in all of history is in the time of the judges in the Bible, right? You want to see real a real culture in which people had the greatest amount of personal autonomy under the umbrella of the rules that God had set. These are the parameters. Within these parameters, you can have complete freedom. And that's what ordered liberty,
Yes.
the concept was. And that's what we need to get back to here. That strip the government of the power that it's taken unto itself. Put it back into the hands of the people. Shrink it. Slash my strategy. Slash and return.
Right.
Slash government. Take the money, every dollar that we save by shrinking government, give half of it back to the people directly in the form of tax reductions or whatever, and the other half apply it toward paying off the debt, including, now, I am very much opposed to public employee unions. I think it's unconstitutional, but nevertheless, we have, through our delegated representatives, we have entered into a massive, multi-billion-dollar debt
Yeah.
that
Oh,
we have to honor, right?
Right.
We have to honor
we
that.
do.
And
They
so,
did do the job.
They did the
work.
job. So this is what I'm proposing. We take half the money we save and we put it into a fund that's dedicated to that, and they're gonna love that. At the same time, we cut it off at the knees now. No new people in the pool
Sure.
on those old rules, right? We have citizen oversight of every one of these contracts from now on.
Certainly.
Voter approval as to what they're gonna get in terms of benefits.
Interesting.
Right? And then, but the ones we already owe the money to, they get half of the savings, right?
Mhm.
They should be cheerleaders for slashing the government under that kind of approach, because they're gonna make sure that their pensions are gonna be secure.
Right now, they're unfunded liability.
Right.
I was going to segue into the next question. You're governor. What's your plan? You've already started talking about it, so continue.
Well, first of all, you can't really do much with the legislature being the way that it is.
That's the other half of the equation.
What I think is most important is the bully pulpit. That the job of the first real conservative governor in decades is to articulate the vision for the future and to teach it over and over and over again, and to use every single opportunity that arises as a teachable moment to show why the leftist agenda fails and how conservatism could do better, knowing that most of what you want to accomplish as a conservative is not going to be possible because of all the barriers are in place.
Sure.
Because the swamp is so deep and so pervasive. So, and that you create an island in the swamp of health, right? And you expand and you drain the swamp to the best that you can from that high ground.
So that island grows.
So the island grows.
And then eventually people start to see the island and they say, we want more of that island.
That's right. That's exactly it. But
Going back to what you said about voter
right.
approval.
Realistic expectations at the beginning.
Right.
Right. And doing everything you can with executive orders, with replacing the corrupt legislators, using the power. You know what's really going on here in Massachusetts? We have a government that is a melding of crony capitalists and organized crime, right?
I like that. I can see that.
Who really runs Massachusetts, right? It used to be, just think about this. Just think about this. What are the solutions that we've now had to fall back to try to solve our problems? Gambling casinos and drug trafficking, right?
Legalize marijuana, right?
Where do those ideas come from?
Right.
Isn't that organized crime? Isn't that what organized crime has always done, going all the way back to the 30s and 40s?
And an interesting, Scott makes a good point. Interesting thing, folks. You talk about the mobs. They always take their cut off the top. All these casinos that are going into Massachusetts, all this gambling that's going into Massachusetts, last time I checked, this was during Deval Patrick's last few days in office, 23%, I think it is, right off the top of all the profits to all these gambling casinos go directly to Beacon Hill.
Yeah,
That's the mob taking their cut.
Right. This is remember Al Pacino,
Sure.
in The Godfather, he's talking to what's her face there, Dan Keaton. He's saying, in 5 years we're going to be completely legitimate. And Kate, I'm Kay. I'm working, and I'm right, right. Well, just take
that's what's
that.
happened to our government.
That's
5
right.
years we're already legitimate.
Right. That's right. And what they did is instead of instead
That's
of
true.
corporations, they did it in government.
Yeah.
And so right now, our government is really legalized organized crime. And you know how they do it? We saw this in Springfield. You know, I got the inside scoop on this, having lived there in the inner city, and among the people that are being exploited. This is how it works. Remember Big Al Bruno getting murdered?
Yes, okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. Right.
Big Al Bruno,
God, that's
the
a jog my
Genovese
memory. Right.
mafia crime family.
That's right.
Right? It's murdered in 2003 in front of Our Lady of Carmel Social Club, like just something right out of the
Right out of
mob
one of the
movies.
Godfather, right.
And
Sopranos.
and in the same year, the police commissioner and a whole bunch of people from Springfield, they get exposed. Some of them go to prison. And what were they doing? They had control of the social service agencies, and they were skimming the money off the top, no-show job arrangements, all that, this whole thing, and a bunch of them went to jail. What we got in this was a glimpse of how this works. And see, the Democrats are really the masters of this. The Republicans are pikers, but the Democrats are really the masters because they're all this where they're talking about social justice and caring for the poor. You know what they're really doing? They keep the poor, the drug addicted, the mentally ill, the homeless, deliberately enslaved in government dependency because every single one of them is an income stream from the federal government. Because for every category they can get them on the checklist for because there's federal money for
More money
homelessness.
comes in from this,
Right. And so what this does is they're keeping they're slaves, they're cash cows
Sure, right.
for funneling money from the federal treasury into state coffers, and in the process of it, I don't know if it's going directly into their pockets or they're the actual skimming like that, but it's going into slush funds that they control, right? In which they can perpetuate, like and that's how it works. That was going on in Springfield, and if it's going on in Springfield, you know it's going on 10 times worse
Sure.
in Boston,
Sure.
right? Same
Probably
type-
Fall River and
right.
I would imagine to a certain, well, even in Worcester, I remember growing up in Worcester, there was always that mob mentality and you always knew that they were somehow connected with City Hall here in Worcester itself.
Right, and patronage, like the whole,
Patronage.
I've been reading
Sure.
I hadn't done this before, frankly, but I've been reading and who does this? The election laws. I'm a lawyer, so I've been reading the election laws. It's illegal. Patronage is illegal. You cannot.
Yeah, but it goes on.
I know.
How
And they're doing it
do
openly.
we do that? How
It's
do we?
against the law, right?
How does that happen?
That's
though?
like the old Dons of Sicily, right? And both parties do it. At the top, that's what we call it the uniparty, right? The people at the top, right? It's the elitist, super rich. They're all secular humanists who may happen to be, Catholic or Protestant or whatever in their, public
Individual
lives,
right.
right? But they're secular humanists. They are arrogant elitists, and they have no problem exploiting the weaknesses of everybody else for their own personal enrichment. Right? That's the big problem I have with gambling casinos, is that some people who own gambling casinos are willing to exploit the weakness of other people to put money in their own pockets.
Is
Right.
that the personification of evil? Is